What's up, Deadheads? It's Brian Castrillo. It is time for The Walking Dead Dead City, Episode 2, titled Who's There review. And there are spoilers coming, so if you don't want to hear them, you know what to do in 3, 2, 1. Now, the first episode was titled Old Acquaintances, where Maggie and Negan meet. They talk about old enemies and friends and whatnot. This one, right in the beginning, brings me back to days gone by of The Walking Dead Episode 1, when Rick was in front of that door. You know the door. And you had walkers sticking their hands through. Well, this episode, Maggie and Negan are in front of a door, and they're going back to what the Green family called them, groaners, and they're sticking their hands through the door, which was so cool. But then this old lady who we met in Episode 1 comes through and grabs Maggie's bag, leads them on this chase, and she's chasing them up into the building where they have zip lines attached to a different building, which is so cool. And if you've never been zip lining, I highly recommend it. My first time was in Nicaragua, off the side of a volcano, in the middle of a rainforest, howler monkeys in the background, coolest thing I ever did. But let's get back to this. Eventually, she has them, chase them to the other side of the building, throws back the zip line so they can come. And when Maggie was going, because she's apparently afraid of heights, which was clear, she almost doesn't make it to the side of the roof, and Negan's offering to help, but she's like, no, I got this, because she doesn't trust him. So eventually this old lady leads him to her group, which they got these gnarly guns, which look like air guns with some sort of grappling hook or something that basically you fire into the chest and it rips out, whatever. And eventually, through some coercion, Negan style, he gets them to be on their side because they don't trust them at all. But eventually, the Croat's group, the guy who was a former savior with Negan, and also the man who took Herschel from Maggie, his guys are coming in, and they in the same building that they're in now. And they got these helmets that have blades and knives or whatever stuck to them, which they use to headbutt walkers, which is absolutely brilliant, by the way. And they're down below, but as they're chasing them, some of their guys, chase them up to the roof, and one of them gets to that old lady and ends up unaliving her. And I think she's related to the bald guy of that group. I'm not sure. But eventually, Negan, in typical Negan fashion, grabs the guy who did that, brings him down to where these people are coming below, because Negan has the high ground like he's Obi-Wan, and he takes the guy's head, smashes him through the glass, and he's like, knock, knock, does it again to the next glass, and he's like, I said knock, knock, you're supposed to say who's there. But eventually he talks crap to the guy below, calls him neckbeard, and he's like, you have a rat tail, just making fun of him. And he basically, takes out his neck, and all the stuff is coming down above him, and he throws the guy on top of him. Typical Negan fashion, but this was an important scene because Maggie saw that, and it's further driving a wedge, because I believe this brings her back to, what happened prior with Glenn. And that I believe is driving a deeper wedge in what's already there. Now we have the Marshal, who we see him wake up from before. The other Marshal was taken out by groaners, and he's walking through the city. He eventually comes to, I believe I don't know if that's his brother that's lying. He unalived himself, but he puts, a blanket over him, some rosary beads, and he's walking through the city and gets caught up in this trap, which eventually Croat catches up with him and, says you're safe or whatever, and takes him with them. And we'll find out what's going to happen with him in the next episode. But an interesting story in this is Negan tells us the backstory of the Croat who was with Negan. He came there, and I guess he had a horrible past, and he's been through a lot, but he's really kind of crazy. And right early in the beginning, there's what I guess is a scout that's out there, and Negan was just he told him to let him go, but the Croat felt like he knew some information, and it was just a kid, and you know how Negan feels about kids, but he forced some information out of him, and Croat did some horrible thing to him, but the Negan, who doesn't like that, went to go shoot at him, and he shot his ear off. So now we know what happened there. So, and he's telling this to Maggie, and And of course, Maggie's like, so obviously he's going to want to take you out too. But what's interests me about that whole thing is that where was Simon in this whole thing? Did Simon know the Croat? Did those guys clash? How did Simon get into his position? But also we got a flashback with Maggie and Herschel, and they seem to have some sort of wedge between them. I'm not sure really what he's upset about. But also we go back to we see the civilization that Maggie has developed. It's very similar to Hilltop. You know, you got the water tower. Are they going to do the water tower thing? The water tower death here? I'm kind of curious. But so in the first episode, we meet Jenny, who is a kid that Negan took under his wing. She doesn't speak at all. She was traumatized by what happened to her dad. And Negan makes Maggie promise that she'll take care of him, but she sent him to that civilization. Now, what's interesting to me is that she said that or not her, but because she doesn't talk, but the other guy who brought her in said that she was from Oceanside, which is obviously what Maggie said. I'm curious, are we going to find where some of the key people from Oceanside are? Are they gonna show up in this series? But either way, this was a fantastic episode. And what I love about this, which you can tell from the higher production, is the scenery, like just the cinematography, where you see like across the city of Manhattan and how beautiful and high definition is. Of course, the city doesn't look beautiful, you know, it's torn down and everything, but just the production value of this. If you're not watching Dead City, you are missing out, because this was absolutely amazing and gorgeous views of the city after it's wrecked during a zombie apocalypse. But what did you guys think? I loved it. Let's talk about it.